This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where it's all about getting the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. Brought to you by Itamar Shafir, founder and CEO of Umbrella, the technology platform and brand that is powering thousands of marketing agencies around the country. Find him at umbrellaus.com. Now, here's your host, Kevin Prewett.
This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, and my name is Kevin Prewett. It's my pleasure to host this, and we have a great guest today who is the co-founder and CEO of Regal.io. He leads their go-to-market teams. Prior to Regal, he was the product manager at Personal and Thomson Reuters, and then joined Handy, which was acquired by Angie in 2018 as an early employee. At both Handy and Angie, he grew up. He led growth and marketing. I'm saying Angie is A-N-G-I.
So it's funny. Everyone knows it as Angie's List. And
yeah, exactly.
And some other brands they own, but they've actually become a public company called Angie, A-N-G-I.
Right, exactly. I'm glad you clarified that. So he grew up in New York, received his BA from Harvard. It is my pleasure to welcome Alex Levin to the Marketing Umbrella Podcast. Alex, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So we had just a minute to chat beforehand, and I am really jealous where he's sitting right now, and I know he's not jealous where I'm sitting. So share with our listeners what if you like popped open the curtains on the window and looked outside, what would you be seeing right now?
Yeah, I was saying right now I'm out in Colorado, and it finally has started snowing. So I have little kids, and they're very excited to go jump outside as soon as a little more snow falls.
In classic understatement, he said, "I'm out in Colorado." He's actually in one of the premier ski areas of Colorado right now. So it is a beautiful state and a great place to be when the snow is falling. But
it's sort of an interesting story. So my wife grew up in Steamboat, where we are now, and when it was tiny, it was a very, very small town. You know, they tell me stories of winters being 40 below, walking uphill to school both ways, right. That kind of stuff
without shoes.
Now it's probably 40 or 50,000 people in town, so it's gotten quite big. And I think my wife wants it to go back the way it was. So she threatens constantly to take out ads in the newspaper saying that there's uranium mines here. So right. Radioactive material found again in Steamboat, go away tourists. Like, she wants it to go back. It's not the most popular opinion.
She is going to join the town council there and then just raise all the restrictions on building. And
she's threatening to join the town council, her position and make it known. We'll see if other people are receptive.
Well, this is I'd love to talk to you about that side of life, but I really want to kind of delve into the marketing side too. But what did that bio is very short for the life you've lived up to date. What's something that you could round out on your bio that would give people a little more fuller picture of who Alex Levin is?
Sure. So to start, I went to a liberal arts undergrad program. I studied philosophy and psychology, nothing to do with business whatsoever. For a while I thought I might want to be an academic, and then I just realized it was, it's a very lonely profession. And the other thing that's hard is in a subject like philosophy, it's 20 years of study before you get to the edge of what's known about a certain topic, because there's been thousands of years of thought about that certain topic. Yeah. And I happened to read, an article called Software is Eating the World around those times and go, oh, well, every business is going to be a software business. I should go to software. And, I guess I understood pretty instinctively early that, it was important to learn how technology worked. And one of the aspects of it that I liked very early was that there'd only been a couple years of investigation into these new topics. And so you could be on the edge of what was possible, learning the newest thing very quickly. You didn't have to do 20 years of research just to get to the edge. Yep. And so that meant that you were constantly learning, which I liked. And it also meant that you were constantly living in somewhat of a state of uncertainty. And I'm okay with that. I'm very comfortable living in a state of uncertainty, and other people are not. So I think, startups are sort of, there's two sides to the coin. On one side, there's a lot of growth and learning. On the other side, there's a lot of uncertainty. But I like that. It's not for everybody. After having been at a couple startups, the last one was very interesting because we went from we joined $1 million in revenue to at the end, maybe $1.5 billion in revenue. We saw a lot of different scale. Yeah. And my now co-founder, Rebecca, and I said, we want to do this ourselves, not as execs for somebody else, but actually, our own company. And there is something really fun about, being able to make sure that the values, the way you make decisions inside the organization are the ones that you believe in, right. And finding people that agree with that worldview and are excited to go after that value proposition that you've discovered. I think, the downside again of being a founder in everything, there's always a downside, is that it's a roller coaster. One day you're on top of the world's greatest stuff is happening, and the next day, it's a really tough day and you get a lot of bad news. And I think, the founders that succeed are the ones that are persistent to insanity, right? No matter what, they keep moving it forward. Because if you have even a doubt in your mind, if you're the type of person that isn't really going to be that persistent, it's too easy to stop and just go and do the next thing and make a paycheck.
So you touched on something really interesting there that I think has come up in so many of interviews and other podcasts that I've listened to. Is just the idea of the persistence of the founder. But there's also, how do you balance that with, chasing, just driving down a dead end? I mean, it's
the hardest part about being an entrepreneur. And honestly, when I was thinking about starting the company, it's one of the things that made me most nervous is this, call it a, dual mindset you have to have. You have to both be incredibly certain that the vision that you're going after is right. And you have to be very open to listening to feedback and willing to shift what you're doing if the feedback turns out to be right.
Right.
And how do you do that? How do you know when to stick to your guns and when to not? And there's stories of, great, like famous stories of both, where, in one case, the founder stuck to his guns and ultimately worked. In another case, the founder completely changed what they're doing and ultimately worked. So it's not like you can just say, I'm going to go look at historical examples to know which one to do.
Yeah.
It's one of the great challenges. What I would say still is, you just have to, stay in the game. What is it they say, 90% of success is just showing up. Sometimes being a startup founder is just like that, is having the desire to just really dig in and understand what's happening and understand what customers are trying to do, where there's value for the customer, and then giving them that value. And whatever the industry is, if you have a nose for that, you can be very successful. So at a point in time, I stopped doing the work in tech to help a small family business that we had, which is in a completely different industry, in the steel business. And, my family buys small amounts of steel from abroad and brings it into small service centers, so physical warehouses, and processes it and sells it in the United States. So not the most technologically advanced business from a software perspective. But one of the days I was in China, I was wandering around a factory there, and I saw that they were making a different product that I thought could be used for a new end use in the United States. So I had them just add some of that product into the container that they were shipping to the United States with a normal product we bought. We started messing around with the United States. It wasn't because anybody told me to. It's just you have to keep your eyes open for value. Ultimately, our customers that were buying the current products were very happy to buy the new product and started buying that as well. So,
but it was related, right? I mean, there was some complementary purpose.
It's a whole other story. There's a product called steel strapping, which is what's used to actually hold steel together. In the United States, there's a near monopoly for the company that provides the steel strapping, and they provide a very high price. And we were able to find the same product in China, shipped to the United States, and get it, landed at a much lower price, so our customers could get the same product at a much more affordable price. So my point is just whatever the industry, as long as you are ready and open to find opportunity for the customers and stay really close to what the customer wants, you'll do fine.
Yeah.
I really do believe that.
So
another way of looking at this is at the core of business, at the very, very core, you have to be partners with your customer. They have to make money and you have to make money off of it. When I meet people who want to get too much out of the relationship, it's not good, right? Both parties have to want to make money. And so
it's really got to be a win-win.
Yeah, the best is when a customer, turns to us and says, cool, we want Regal to make money too, because if Regal's successful, we'll keep making better products for them and it'll make them more successful. That's the type of partnership that doesn't happen as much anymore.
And it's really not just about the profit margin. I mean, it really is about, added value. It's about, integrity. It's about, I think I was listening to another podcast you were talking about, companies that may design like their website without ever talking to a customer, or without or even potential customer. And I unpack that just a little bit because, I mean, on the surface, it's one of those duh moments, but, there's more to it than that. It is like, you can assume you understand your customer. You can assume that you understand that what they want, but that's a dangerous game.
Yeah, but I'll give you like a more nuanced view of it. Before I joined Handy and then Angie, I was working in a different industry. And on the side, I was thinking a little bit, I hadn't met the founders of Handy yet. And I was thinking a little bit about how you create a site that would allow the booking of home services online. And I'd mocked up some stuff. And it never even occurred to me that I could take that and put it in front of customers, take their money, and like go do this. It's just not how I thought at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought like, well, I have this idea, and I'd have to get validation from somebody who'd give me money and validation from a professor. I'd have to get validation from all these non-customary people before I could go and do it. And one of the greatest things I learned, one of the greatest lessons I got from the founders of Handy was, no, just go. The only validation you need is the customer. Mm. So what they did is they had a very similar insight that I did to what I had, but they took it and literally they were in business school at the time. They went to their business school classmates and they said, do you want a handyman? Do you want a cleaner? And some people said yes. I gave them money, which is the greatest validation. It's not just yes, it's here's money. And so they all of a sudden had to scramble and go find cleaners and go and find handymen and find electricians to serve it. But before they knew it, they had a business because there was a pain point and there was a customer willing to pay and there was somebody willing to do the job. And now they had to go and build the process and technology to scale that. But they sort of opened my eyes to the fact that you don't need to ask anybody else's permission except the customer. So I think like the advice I have for people very early is just get to the customer as fast as possible. Even if you don't have a product built yet, be honest with them, but ask them, is this a problem that is worth you paying for? And they may just shove money down your throat to try to get you to solve it for them.
Or iterate it to the point that it is useful to them.
Yeah. The way I sometimes explain it to folks when they're very early starting a new business, first of all, don't go to your friends because they're just going to be nice to you and tell you they like it. Even then, go to like at least 1 degree removed. When you're sitting down with them and you're going through like the pain point and they go, yeah, pain point, cool. You validated a pain point. And you start explaining what you want to do. If they're not reaching across the table and saying that, I want that now, you don't have a business. If they're saying, yeah, that's nice. Maybe I buy it one day. Okay. What's the price? It's not a business. You will know because literally they are going to start hounding you and saying, how do I get that? And it's interesting also, of the 8 things you presented to them that you think you want to do, in your business, there's probably one that everybody really wants. And you think you're going to do those 8 in the first 6 months, probably going to take you 10 years to do the 8 things that you originally wanted to do. But as long as you go into it with that mindset, you'll be fine.
It almost seems like, software has kind of like feature creep, where they're just adding features onto it because this is cool. We can do this and nobody has ever asked for it. The whole idea.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest danger exists in like in product and engineering orgs. And this is not, I'm not thinking of anybody specific, but like I have certainly seen, a product manager is trying to achieve a goal of making the product better. But that's not the goal. The goal is to have the customer's outcome be better, which is very different than making the product better. So, and the customer may be misleading, right? They may be saying, I want this feature, I want that feature on the other feature. But that doesn't mean that you should actually go build those things. Doesn't mean you should keep investing in that product. So I think the ability as a product manager to take a step back and really understand what moves the needle and what doesn't, and rank ordering that and making sure you're spending time on the things that move the needle is important, because the truism of being a product manager or an engineering manager is that each thing you do takes longer than you think. So all of that, I'm just going to add this tiny little thing that one customer wants becomes a 3-week project instead of a 3-day project.
And cost triples.
Right. So just don't do it. Just say no and focus on the things that are actually going to drive value for the customer.
Was it Steve Jobs that kind of alluded to the fact that, customers don't always know what even to ask for?
That's
and others, so.
They may, I wouldn't put it so starkly, like they may not be able to articulate exactly what they want. So I do think like it's about helping them understand, in their processes, where there's real value that they're not capturing or real opportunity that they're not going after, and then if they stand back and they go, wow, of the 12 projects I have that are trying to drive revenue, what you just identified is way bigger than anything else I have on the docket. Cool. Now you're in good shape. If they say, look, of the 12 project, this is number 13. Yeah, you've identified something, but it doesn't move the needle.
So I really do want to dive down further into Regal here in just a second, but you keep mentioning these things that are so interesting. I want to chase them, but it seems like a very, very slight nuance between what is best for the customer and what they're asking for, what they want, what they ask for, that they want in a product. So how do you, I mean, it's always customer relations. It's always, how do you walk through with them and with empathy and understanding and, creativity and strategy, but how do you convey to your client that what you're asking for is not the best? Actually, in my experience, it's not really what you need. It's not the best thing. How do you kind of
It's very hard. Again, using generalities, the more senior you go in an organization, the easier it is to talk about vision and overall goals and not get bogged down by a specific product, and make sure you're coming back to what is the real reason we're working together. Is it because you're trying to add more customers, drive more revenue, keep them for long? Like, what is the real thing? And then you can come back and say, cool, if that's your goal, is this really what you want us doing? And it's easier at the senior level to do it. By the time you get deeper into organizations, not that people are not smart, it has nothing to do with it. They're, in a good way, more myopically focused on the thing they're trying to do.
No doubt about it.
They may not see the holistic picture.
Right.
And it's very hard to change that conversation. I think you find, organizations have different cultures. Some organizations have a culture of, being willing to test and try and iterate and, and be open to vendor suggestions. And other companies don't. Other companies say, no, my opinion is this. I'm the boss. I'm right. I want it done this way.
Yeah.
There's one is not right. Both can be successful. There are definitely times we've built products for customers where we didn't agree that they were right, but we knew it was important to them, and so we wanted to do it for them, and so we did it anyway. So it's a bit of a range. What I would sort of guide is, when you're in sort of mid-market or commercial spaces, it's easier to not do what the customer wants, because you say, okay, I'm gonna have 100 customers. I don't have to do what each one wants. When you're an enterprise and you have one customer that's making you a lot of revenue, it's harder to say no to the customer.
Yeah.
The consequence of that is, if you have too many enterprise customers too soon, you can get dragged away from what you're trying to do by the enterprise customer. So I often suggest to people to start in more mid-market spaces where you can build a product that you want before you go to enterprise, where they're going to drag you to where they want. So don't go to enterprise too soon, or you could end up building the wrong product.
Yeah.
It might be specific to that one company, not to many.
Doesn't have as broad an appeal. But now I probably was thinking more along the lines of, is it the right build versus whether you're binarily working with them or not, type thing. So let's talk about Regal. I mean, you do focus on companies that are B2C versus B2B. What was that? What you came to that fork in the road and you thought, okay, were you listening to customers that told you, hey, this is where the gap in the market is?
Yeah. So in our case, we were the customers. So, my co-founder and I had helped different startups bring businesses online, and the beginning online was a lot of retail, right? Whether it was clothing, CDs, whatever it might be. And there was a playbook. It was, have a picture, have a price, have a review, have easy returns. Cool. Rinse and repeat. And, we were hired to help in this home services industry. And we started on that model of how do you productize? The whole concept was, how do you productize a service so you could sell it online in a digital way? And, we attracted a lot of customers, and it was a business, and it's not that it was small, but what we learned that was embarrassing over time is our online conversion rate of these leads was worse than the conversion rate of the old school paper and pencil providers. So what that meant is, yes, we were offering a service, but it wasn't as good as we thought. And we tried every which version of digital only flows, and it never got to the point where it was offline. And so finally, as we were sort of investigating all this, we found that if we actually had a conversation with the customer, they bought more of our, of our services. And we go, well, against everything we've been taught on the internet. But it opened up our mind. And now the way I see the world is that there's sort of very different playbooks. There's the retail playbook, which is a very commoditized product where maybe service is a cost center and you want to have as little interaction with the customer as possible. I say maybe. And on the other side, you have these more considered industries. So think of, about half the economy is in healthcare, education, lending, local services, financial services. And everyone who shops online is demanding that these other services are online. So it's coming online at lightning speed. These businesses are trying to figure out the right way to do it. And they're all finding the same thing, that if they do digital only, actually it gets worse. If you open a bank account, the funding rate digital only is only like 30%. When you have a human interaction, a personal interaction, it goes back up to like 80%, which is what it was offline. So all of these businesses are now sort of thinking, how do I, in a digital flow, add a personal touch in the right moments, whether it's a sales or retention or win back or support that drives revenue. And, I don't want to do something that annoys the customer, and I don't want to give them a human being when they don't need a human being, but I need to find the right moments throughout that journey to go and do it. And the way it's been done to date is really terrible. So at the last company, we had these very legacy contact center software, and basically on inbound, you deflect and you don't want to talk to them. And on outbound, you kind of try to guess who the people are and you call them all 18 times until they answer and you tell them all the same thing. And it's not the way of the future. And so customers now have come to expect a much better level of service, both on when they're, inbounding to you and when you're calling them. And so that's where Regal came from, is how do we actually use all of the things that customers are doing that they're basically telling us, whether it's on the website, they're clicking on things or they're saying things in a conversation or, other aspects of their behavior, to create a map of their intent and use that intent to know when we should reach out and what channel, with what message, with what script to drive to the best possible outcome. So in healthcare, for instance, in a very real sense, we have companies that are doing sort of protocols around diabetes, and all of that customer's health information flows into our system so that they can figure out at what moments should they be reaching out to make sure that customer gets the care they need. At what moments should they be sending that customer to the hospital? At what moments should they be getting the person to do something else? And so that sort of ability to use the explosion of customer data to do something that's a better experience for them is really at the core of what we do. Sometimes that's called omni-channel orchestration. It's very common technology in marketing, but in marketing, it's all about one way, telling them something, sending them a text, sending them an email.
All outbound,
Right. In our world, it's about how do you create a conversation? So there's actual real value to still having that conversation. And so it's not right for every industry. For sure, if you're selling pencils online, you can't afford to have a conversation with a customer. But as long as you make at least, call it $100 or $200 from that customer a year, you can afford to have human beings engaging with them. And in fact, it's cheaper than many of the marketing channels that people are looking at today, which is kind of mind-boggling. So people think human expensive, but it's not. And so that's the intersection we sit at, is how do you use data intelligently to activate that data and actually have the right conversations with these customers to drive more, a better lifetime value from that customer.
What has been your experience? I've got two questions that have just crossed my mind at one time. One of them is the idea around, it's not just about sales, it's also about retention. I mean, I can see retention going up exponentially if you have these interactions. But what is your feedback as a company to this idea of just spam fatigue? I can show you my iPhone. I got 42 calls in the last 48 hours, that just either deflected, I blocked, or whatever. So how are you like engaging in that tumultuous space a little bit too? How are you getting around that?
Yeah. So again, our goal is that you as a customer are getting on brand, consistent experiences, at the moments that matter. So we want to get away from this world of like lots of calls that you don't know what they're doing at the wrong moments that are not relevant to you.
So they've already said yes at some point in time. They've already said there's an interest, there's an outreach, something.
SoFi is a customer of ours. So in SoFi, it's a relatively complicated, thing. You're trying to get your student loan refinanced or get a personal loan. You're coming to their site. You're trying to do it digitally. And if you can, great. But what's happened is the majority of customers are doing it on their cell phone now, which makes it harder because it's a small screen, and they get stuck somewhere. And in that moment when they get stuck, we can then identify those users that are, in need of help. We can make a call, and we can have it come now from a branded number. So we have a deal with the cell phone company. So it says SoFi. So now it's not an interruption. It's actually an extension of the experience. When you engage, they're not going and reading off the same script for everybody. They can say, hey, Alex, I see, you went to this school 3 years ago and you have this loan and you're trying to do exactly this. It looks like you were confused by this one thing. Can I help you with it? And it's not about hard sales, right? It's about disambiguation and helping that person through that moment. And then, hey, do you need my help anymore? Or do you want to go do it on your own online again and getting out of it? And so I think that moment, when it's done correctly, makes that customer feel special. So they go, wow, I'm not one name in a million, I'm one in a million, right? So that, that brand actually cares about me. That brand makes sure that I'm getting what I need. That brand is helping me out and I'm going to stay with that brand. So differentiating on service not only increases conversion rate, but to your point, like would actually create a better attachment to the brand and better retention over the long run. So I think it's, a major transition. Now, the good news on a couple things is the government is massively helping by trying to stamp down a lot of the spam. They're mostly focused on the consumer side, and it's having a very positive effect. Personally, I've noticed an explosion of spam actually coming from businesses, right? That think of me as a business buyer. That's a weird loophole in these laws. SoFi is not allowed to call a consumer that has not given them permission. That law is very clear. A business that wants to sell a business something is technically allowed to, it's in a gray area, but is allowed to make that call in many cases. The problem is they're calling me and I'm an individual and they're calling my cell phone. So my cell phone gets blown up. So there's definitely more work to be done to close that loophole so that businesses can't just randomly call everybody anymore. And they can only call the people that have given them permission to. But I think generally the regulation is going in the right direction and stamping down a lot of the bad calling. And then when we work with our customers, right, they don't want to call you 18 times. They want to call you once, have that they called you and then move on. And I think that's the right direction.
I love the fact that there is certainly some intervention in this chaos that we're living in now. But I'm curious about just the approach that if you have human interaction that on a company's behalf or whatever, it's almost like if you do your job well, you're going to work yourself out of a job because you're kind of identifying the stuckages in the software, you're identifying the breakdown in the customer journey and those types of things. So have you seen, I mean, it's a relatively short journey that you've been on so far, but have you seen that where just the process improves just because of your because you're in there?
The core tool set we give people is one that allows them to continue to do experimentation. So it's not like they're coming to us and saying, cool, I fixed the problem, done. It's not like that. It's, in the same way, you have a website, but you're constantly iterating on the website to make it better. We give them the tools to think about that revenue generation, whether it's sales or support, as a customer journey, and to constantly be iterating on it and trying to find better paths. And as competition changes, as the pricing has to change, as your product changes, you're then constantly updating what you're doing to make sure you have the right experience for the customer. So I don't think it's in the same way a website is never done. I don't think these flows are ever done, which is why you see, companies continue to use this over time. I do think one massive transition that, you can't not mention is the ability for AI to behave more like a human. So we're not there yet, but I don't think it's unreasonable to say within the next 10 years, AI will be indistinguishable from a human, certainly on text message and probably on voice. And so there's a world in which you don't need the agent to be on the phone, at least on most basic conversations. You can have AI doing that and still emoting and handling that. and you can use humans to do the more complicated pieces.
Right.
Net, that's a massive deflationary force. So that'll actually enable brands to bring prices down, enable more consumers to buy products, enable the brands to focus on other areas. They'll still need the same software, but we just may not have agents in our tool. We may have AI bots or whatever you want to call them in our tool handling the actual interactions.
And there's certainly no AI bot going on family leave. There's nobody that's sick for a day. There's nobody retiring. It's like 24/7. Yeah.
They hallucinate, and which sort of is a way of saying lying. They break down sometimes. They may not. Certain things may send them into loops. It's definitely there are other challenges with AI. Maybe the biggest one that is misunderstood is people think of AI as cheap. Oh, it's like software. It's it's very cheap. Actually, AI is very expensive. There are huge amounts of processes behind the scenes that have to go on to make it work. So yes, it's less expensive than having a human being do it, but it's not like some software now where the marginal cost is negligible. There's a real marginal cost to run AI models.
So is Regal, is it a white labeled solution or is it branded solution? I mean, what if you're talking, let's say, to marketing agencies that see a real application here, what is the product that they are actually wanting to incorporate into their clients?
Yeah, so to some extent, what we've built is a very modern contact center software, or we sometimes like to refer to it as a customer engagement platform. We build software that you can use to engage with your customer. If you're an agency and you would like your end customer to use it, we do have relationships where we can sort of have referral partners and they can sell it on to their customers. Typically, the actual customers using our products, are doing outbound calling. They are in more considered industries. They have at least, call it 100 agents. So it's not tiny businesses that are using it. It's the larger businesses where this becomes more and more important.
And is this lead generation? Is this a little further down in the funnel? Where is kind of the prime spot for the software?
I mean, honestly, throughout the funnel, a lot of people will start using us in sort of that lead generation and sales and onboarding part of the funnel. And then they'll realize it's important in, cross-sell, and important in win back, and important even in support. So it might start in that lead gen world, but it can be very wide.
So I got two questions before we hit the speed round here. So one of them, you mentioned in your bio here. So give me one lesson you learned from scaling a startup from 1 million to $1 billion in revenue.
I'll give you like one personal lesson, and then one maybe that is more valuable to other people. So a personal lesson is, sort of know what you like and you don't like. I was very happy at the beginning when it was an earlier stage company. By the time it was big and we were managing managers and managers, I was not having as much fun. It's not the kind of place that I want it to be. And that's why, for me, it's so exciting to be back, at the early stages of a startup. I like being in this place. And I would just say, other people should think about that for themselves. What do you like? Not, what do people think that is right for you? In terms of, a lesson for other people, I would say one of the sort of ones that I took away also I talked about one earlier around just going and talking to customers and not asking others for permission. But another is, if you're going to go and try to learn something, and you're going to do a test, do the most extreme version of the test. And I'll explain what I mean. So very often, let's say, you're selling cars and you want to know if dropping the price will help you sell more cars. People will go, okay, if my price was $50,000, I'm going to drop it to $49,999 and see what the impact is. Well, guess what? It's very unlikely that that's going to drive any impact. And so you're either going to decide that pricing didn't change anything, which is maybe the wrong conclusion, or you're going to go, shoot, I need to run this test again at $499,098, whatever.
Exactly.
So, it's not actually getting you to what you need to know. So instead, if you drop the price to $45,000, you would learn much faster whether that actually drove anything. So do more people buy the car because of a lower price? Now you've reached significance. Hopefully the answer, let's say you find out, is yes. Now you can go spend time optimizing the pricing and figuring it out. But by doing the most extreme thing, what happened is you learned much faster, you got to an answer, and then you knew which direction to go into. Or you might have learned that it doesn't do anything, and you don't have the excuse of saying, oh, I didn't do enough in that way. So I really encourage people to do the extreme version so they don't come back 2 weeks later and say, the reason it didn't work is I didn't do enough.
Yeah.
So what that does ultimately is it creates an organization that learns faster or fails faster. And honestly, that's what the best organizations do, is they're constantly experimenting and failing and then, learning from it and moving forward.
That absolutely makes perfect sense on the whole idea of, it's like fail forward versus, but do it fast, fire fast, fail fast. I mean, everything is
so you make extreme experiments, not little ones.
So if you were speaking directly to, say, marketing agency owners, just about this space, about the whole customer interaction space, customer relationship or engagement software space, what is one thing that you would want them to know about, not necessarily, I mean, you can speak to it specifically about Regal, but just in general about this particular space that would be helpful to them, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave them with two thoughts. So first of all, I was taught, and a lot of us were taught for a long time, that customer service is a cost center and you should drive down customer service costs. It's not true, right? Let's go back to understanding that service is a differentiator and there's real opportunity to drive revenue from customer service and from the interactions you have with customers. So, stop optimizing for lowering costs and start optimizing actually for what results in the best lifetime customer value. So that's one. Second is, as you're thinking about new channels for your customers to use to engage and convert, just because digital channels are push button and easy doesn't mean they're the right channels. So sure, you can go spend another $100 on Google very easily, or on another digital platform very easily. But very often the marginal CAC, the marginal cost of acquiring a customer in a digital channel gets quite high. Now, on the other hand, actually spending dollars to invest in sales, like human sales to engage with your customer, feels expensive, but it's not. It's actually often much cheaper. If you're having $5 labor cost per interaction, which is pretty average, and you're converting 1 in 10 of those, your cost per conversion is $50. So as long as that's cheaper than the marginal cost of spending dollars on digital channel, you probably should be exploring some of these more conversational human channels. For a long time, it's not how we thought as marketers. We thought, let's use digital only channels. But I think you have to open up your mind and say, what matters actually is what is the mix of channels that is going to result in the best possible revenue outcome. And, if talking with the customer is actually driving a better outcome, then I should do more of that, even though it's a little bit harder operationally.
I love that example that you just gave about, just I mean, if you have advertised on LinkedIn lately, I mean, you realize how expensive that can get in a very short period of time. And it was a great example that comparing, say social to human interaction. But give me just a chance here to kind of transition to this is a really fun part of the podcast because I'm going to ask you questions that are going to seem so random and, out of play. You're going to go, how does that even really apply to what we talked about? But there is a method to our madness here. So because we're trying to even paint as broad a picture as we can, but I'm going to ask you these questions, just rapid fire, quick answers, as quick as possible. Did you get along with your parents growing up?
Yeah.
Do you have siblings?
Yep. 2 younger brothers.
Do you currently have a pet?
No, my wife wishes we did, but no pets.
No pets allowed. You don't have time.
We have 2 little kids. That takes a lot of time.
Okay, that's the next question. Children.
Yeah, 2 children.
What time do you wake up in the morning, generally?
Whenever my kids do. So, 6 a.m., something like that.
And what time do you try to go to bed?
Midnight.
And your ideal vacation spot outside of Steamboat Springs, money not an object.
Oh, somewhere like in the Alps, like in the mountains.
So how does faith come into play when you operate in business?
Not too much for me, honestly.
So if you could be king for a day and change one thing about the marketing space as a whole, what would that one thing be?
It's a good question. I don't know. If I could wave a magic wand, how would I change it? I mean, ultimately, I do think the transition should be more towards what are called owned channels than rented channels. So instead of constantly spending money on Google and on LinkedIn and on, a platform somebody else owns, finding a way to build a direct relationship with that customer is more valuable. And the brands that have been able to do that and really, serve those customers well, I've seen outperform. So I think, customers want that, right? They don't want to be treated as the same as everybody else. They want a brand to say, you are special, you are different, like how to make a direct connection with you.
If there's any closing thought that I have not touched on, I haven't asked you about, that you think would kind of wrap this up just in a very short period of time, but also tell people where the best place to maybe find you online, find out more about Regal.
Yeah. So, if you're in a more considered business, or you're doing outbound calling already, or looking to turn your contact center from a cost center into a revenue center, we'd love to chat with you. You can always go to regal.io or email me at hello@regal.io.
Alex, I really appreciate your time today. It's a great way to kind of enter the weekend for both of us, but just thanks for just sharing your expertise and your insights and really just helping, marketing agencies as a whole grow and scale their business. It's truly been a pleasure talking to you. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to another great episode of the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where we provide the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. To learn more, go to umbrellaus.com.